I'm Thea Dabetic, founder of the brand marketing agency Posh Media, and in this series of talks, Marketing Behind the Scenes, we'll open up stories that often aren't seen from the outside. What growth, challenges, and the beauty of running a marketing agency look like starting from Belgrade and now working with clients all over the world. With me today are three amazing women who are the heart of our team. Una Kolesar, Client Management Lead, Tatjana Manojlovic, Account Manager, and Anja Matijevic, Digital Strategy Lead. Today, we're talking about the journey from a local to a global agency, about challenges, fears, but also about all those small and big victories that make up our story.
Thank you, T. You know what? What would I like to start with now? That's maybe a nice introductory question for me. Let me ask you first, Anja. What was that moment when you felt, hey, we've become a global agency, we're working with global clients?
It was at a particular point when a large group that we have been working with for many years in the Serbian market decided to hire us to also take charge of the campaigns for their other companies, which are operating in the Western European market.
For you, Tanya?
For me, that was the moment when we started receiving emails with foreign names, shifting the conversation more into English. So I think that was definitely the moment when we realized that we had gone global.
As far as I remember, from that initial 70% in Serbian and 30% in English has shifted in favor of the English language. Today, we can freely say that we use English for about 90% of our daily our day.
Definitely.
With that, let's say that remaining small percentage is for that internal team that is located in Belgrade. Mind you, now, because of this team and of course the expansion of Posh Media in general to other markets in terms of staff and other colleagues and teams, we even speak English with them. So that was actually the moment when I, as the owner, realized we'd gone global, that right, English has become our everyday and our operational language. Well, yeah, read, write, speak, respond.
Yes. Read, write, speak.
And what about you,
Respond
Una?
in English.
Yes, tell us about you and your team. So in fact, actually, how did you realize that we are now, right, global?
Yes, you get carried away with the daily work and it's like, okay, great, we've won a new client. Yes, great, from new foreign markets, and somehow the work carries you and you don't have time to realize it in the moment. But I remember exactly the scene where I'm talking to my team and I realize there's silence and they're looking at me. They're listening to me very carefully, and I realize that I'm actually talking and exclusively explaining cultural differences, which means what they have to pay attention to, which color, which composition, which tone of voice, because it's a culture that's different. It has its own specifics, how carefully they listen to me while I explain the way they should talk to the client. That, for example, in a specific culture, something that shows our dynamism, readiness, or willingness and speed for that specific culture would be too arrogant and they would consider us aggressive. And simply that first meeting somewhere with a large team where we exclusively talk about those cultural differences left an impression on me like, yeah, that's it.
Exactly. On the other hand, I believe not only in that aspect of recognizing how we've, actually gone global now, whereas we were locally oriented, we also have that other aspect, which is challenges, right? And then what were actually our biggest challenges and how did we overcome them? I'm turning to Anja now because it seems to me each of us with our team and in our field of action, but I'm interested to hear Anja, and I know what you tell us.
Well, we already had a large knowledge base and extensive experience in digital campaigns, but global business required that extra level of organization and structure. So we simply had to really familiarize ourselves with a range of different markets, carefully analyze how various platforms operate in Asia, and understand what the main differences are in consumer habits, for example, in the USA compared to Europe. As a result, we became much more detailed and thorough in our approach. So before setting up each campaign, as far as my part goes regarding digital, we had to first research the market, the cultural differences that Una already mentioned, to optimize the budget. Simply, more budgets we worked with and had. Simply, when you work in the local market, you already roughly know consumer habits, tone of voice, approximate budgets. Here it was now necessary to research, optimize budgets, set clear goals, test which messages and visuals simply work in certain markets. So we became much more detailed in our approach. Besides that, we also had to make some changes regarding performance. So we introduced advanced analytics in real time in order to be faster in certain reactions and changes and to optimize our time as much as possible. And we also had to begin utilizing tools for collaborative communication. So those are some of the challenges we as an agency faced. But we very quickly organized and set everything up.
And I would follow up on Anja just when she mentioned those tools for joint communication. Simply, of course, they are now a reality and everyday life for everyone. I mean, in any business, including agencies, but I believe that each of us remembers the moment first personally and then within our team when you introduce a tool that requires them to keep their own records daily, to follow it and so on, and that there is that period when you introduce it. But simply those tools, and generally there is that stigma, oh, tools, do I need that, do I not need that? They are a natural thing. They simply really make this job easier, and they very quickly, maybe they seem like a bogeyman now while they're being introduced, especially in the era of AI, but we'll mention that somewhere. Talking about it, so maybe they seem like a bogeyman, but they are very simple and very natural, so don't ever give up on tools and on the automation of your business. This is a warm recommendation of ours. There's one more question I'd like to ask, specifically about global issues or challenges. What do you think about 24/7 availability in the sense of working with clients from different time zones?
Well, clients have actually gotten used to us being available to them 24/7. Clients are used to getting, or rather giving us, very tight deadlines. That's right. That is what we all love the most.
That's right.
Those are actually the challenges. I mean, like what Tanya, I just jump in, yourselves, and here are all those who do this job of ours in the marketing industry, and also those who plan to enter this scope of business. Simply, marketing as a field is a bit different. In what sense different? You're always in some kind of deadlines. It's always something for yesterday. The metrics are such that expectations are always that, well, we call it in marketing and maybe elsewhere, I don't know, return on investment. So you always have that link between what you gave and what you got back. And accordingly, those expectations do create stress. But on the other hand, they're also very creative. They create that positive adrenaline in a person. So that 24/7 might sound scary, but everything can be organized, of course, not that we as individuals work 24/7, but as a team, yes. So the organization of that global aspect of Posh Media is such that we've hired people who are, of course, in other time zones and who can work normally during their own working hours, right? And that's been recognized by clients, and that's why Posh has actually progressed so much and achieved such an expansion.
That's right.
So the 24/7 challenge is also, on the other hand, I think, an advantage. It is an inspiration for good organization.
Yes, and it's an inspiration for good organization, because I think that with those tools and an awareness that there are different time zones and different cultures, different demands, and team members themselves from different zones, it's forced us to really think and organize ourselves well at some point.
What we should definitely do is advise, after all, people in our industry, marketers or students and young people planning to open their own studio, to think from the perspective of our business. We are on the threshold of the world. We are part of the world. In what sense? We shouldn't think locally, because our job allows us, our creativity, to act globally, which means we're online, we work remotely, or it doesn't matter, hybrid, it can be from the office, but our job allows communication with a large number of people, with clients who are in other time zones. From that point of view, that window openness is something that goes hand in hand with marketing. We kind of support everything and give them the wind in their sails, so that, for example, at Posh, they start thinking a bit more broadly.
Oh, it's great you mentioned that, but can you recall and tell us the story of Porsche from 2019?
Well, I mean, that's that kind of, let's say, change in 19 onwards, which everyone, right, survived, lived through and went through, and that's 20, the year in COVID. For some, definitely, many businesses may have suffered great damage, but by chance, luck, and the good infrastructure we had, our industry exploded, and in that sense, Posh as well. Then, of course, we were recognized precisely by those foreign clients, and that expansion happened. What I would mention as a challenge now, after everything that we've overcome, is a challenge in my own head that was actually a taboo, where let's say years ago in London, I realized that we in marketing, whether we're from Eastern Europe, whether we're from the UK or the United States or from Asia and Dubai, we were just there, you and I, right, at the Marketing Congress in Dubai. We marketers anywhere on this globe have the same mindset. We're fighting the same challenges, and we celebrate, let's say, the same victories. We think alike, we organize work operationally the same way, we use the same wording. So in that sense, that challenge or taboo that if I work or if we work for a company or a project in Tokyo, that it's something too foreign for us, actually doesn't exist. I mean, globalization has done its part. We're all on the same wavelengths.
Exactly. And since you mentioned it, let me ask you, Anja, from your point of view, let's talk about what it's like covering things globally through that online platform Porsche established, which makes it flexible and open to all those global opportunities, or rather global characteristics. What's most important to you there for your job or as a lesson learned?
I'd like to briefly mention just one more important challenge, and then I'll come back to this, which is that now in this era of artificial intelligence or AI, we're actually facing disrupted timelines for how long it takes to complete a task. I mean, clients have also, in many cases, simply shortened deadlines. And it's just expected that now, for example, if we're talking about a post, well, yeah, it's expected that it will simply be delivered at the speed...
With the speed of ChatGPT.
The speed of ChatGPT. Consequently, we're fast because we've also started using a number of different AI tools that help us out in these processes. But, well, that's a challenge that I think we should definitely draw attention to.
And it's great you mentioned it,
we can draw
yes.
attention, but to the inevitability, I mean, let's all agree. The inevitability of the future in marketing and other industries is technology and the progress of that AI. So that AI actually speeds up reality, speeds up the work process, and what is definitely true is that we must embrace it, otherwise we won't keep up with the times, and we have embraced it. Now, where do we as experts in our, let's say, functions and industries, what do we recognize? What I recognize is that it's slowly becoming perfect. Perfect text, perfect image, perfect photograph, perfect video. I think that people, target groups, consumers will get tired of perfection, and that we will eventually reach those insights and the desire of the observer to see organic, actually to see imperfection and that human side. So slowly we haven't reached that moment yet. There's time. We're only at the beginning of perfection, but that's something that I at least feel as a direction in which all this is going. And what do you agree, Tanya? We talked about it, I mean, even when we finish work and then comment like that, but let's mention that too. A very important thing is that we as an agency work with a certain large company where actually what makes that step beyond, or that humanity, is that understanding of us as managers, that on the other side there are also people. It is some big brand, but people work in that brand. And that manager who is, say, in charge of you as an agency, right, the marketing manager or marketing director of that company, is still a human being after all. So that connection between us and them, I mean, meeting them halfway, even when actually, let's say, the contract doesn't cover meeting them halfway, or I don't know, it doesn't cover your specific fee, whatever. I mean, you still understand that that person has their own timeline, that they might have their superiors or expectations and some targets, and that you as an agency are actually a partner to that person and of course to that brand. In the end, I mean, we all do it purposefully for the benefit of that brand. That moment is also very important to mention.
Yes, and it simply means that when you work with a company, that person on the other side, the individual you are communicating with, they have their own good or bad days, just like everyone else. Now, what does that mean for us in business? It means if it's a bad day, I might get some very strange inputs and some very strange requests. But then our expertise comes in, and to follow up, it's exactly that understanding of the client. And when a day like that happens and we really strive for this and work on it, we take a step back, wait a moment, and give the client advice regarding a specific request. And we truly try to build that trust and advisory role with the client every day. And then we give advice, we give our recommendations on whether something is good or bad and how it can be done better. And then often a request that just popped up suddenly takes on a much better and higher quality form with our help. And that's exactly because of the human aspect, because of understanding the individual we're working with and not just the brand or just the company or...
Right? Because at the end of the day, we all have the same goal. The goal is to get a task done for the client, for us as an agency, for my team, your team, Anja's team. That's just how it works.
I wanted to ask you, which small victories motivated you the most on this journey of ours? I mean, on the path that we have traveled.
Win is when the client is satisfied, when they expand the range of services we offer, when we work with them, and exactly what we just mentioned, when we create that connection with the client themselves, when we get a thank you, when we get praise, that's something that really motivates us. So I think that we actually have these small wins very often, and that's why, well, we're expanding the team, and that's why we're also expanding the business worldwide.
You know what? I'll put it in more common terms. When a client tells me I was moved to tears.
When we reach the point where a client tells you, I started crying, but from happiness, I guess, Una. Happiness, of course.
Yes, exactly. Moved to tears. Tears of joy, of course. So we touched the client so deeply and profoundly with what we did, and it truly made a significant impact. We often say delivered, but technically speaking, yes, that is exactly what we did. Passed it on to the client, and because of how we executed a project, whether visual, textual, conceptual, or even a strategy. Well, maybe not a strategy for tears, but
some numbers.
Some numbers. Yes, numbers, tears of joy. But tears are just one example of those moments when our work and what we provide truly manage to evoke a positive, powerful, and intense emotion in them.
Yeah, so that's something that drives us.
I think for each of us, of course, no matter how careful we are, I've been in this business for 24 years now, and I remember myself from the beginning when I first saw a billboard done by Posh Media back then. I mean, that feeling of pride that we created something. It's now on the streets of our city, and so many people are looking at it. I was flying, I wasn't like walking, or I don't know, when from the airport, and that's also another memory. I land with a plane and then I see the branding we did at the airport. Well, that was fascinating to me. So I think that even today that somehow motivates us, and that's some kind of the greatest feedback, that awareness that our work exists. It is now in the virtual world, sometimes in print, right? But that moment still drives us. I think that's something that each of us, when you see it, well, of course, I mean, everyone in every business probably, but ours is somehow very visible because we deal with creativity.
You really can't miss it, and you simply can't ignore it.
And the numbers, when we're not talking about visuals, this design, there are numbers that we track every day.
And when we get a bravo for those numbers.
And Anja, since you mentioned numbers now, I'm really interested in what it's like for you. Well, now you and your team that you lead. So you come with monthly analytics. Sometimes they counted, I don't know, for Eastern Europe, I don't know, several 100,000 or like 1 million too. Now, when you work globally, we're talking about millions. Are you aware that when you have a number of 10 million in front of you, that those are people? Meaning that 10 million people, 10 million souls saw your asset that your team completed. I mean, or has it remained just a number? Are you aware of your impulse and, let's say, the influence you exert? I haven't realized it.
Hey, you know, when I realized that when we were at a client's party, and that since we do employer branding for them, and all those employees at that party got hired at that company like that, by seeing our well-made advertisements, as you can clearly see, we actually do all of them. And you told me at one point, Anja, are you aware all these people? Just to clarify, what I mean here is that you hired them. Yes, so that was for me. I looked around and like, yes, all those texts, all those ads, all those visuals reached them, and they are now here working for this company.
And meanwhile, there are hundreds around us, you know.
So, well, at that moment, I realized...
And just imagine now all over the world, you understand? Various clients, I don't know, in Germany, where we don't even know. So that's something that really is special.
That's the feeling, that sense of uniqueness for me, which you mentioned at the very beginning. And those were my first 2 exotic markets. It was about employer branding. And, remember when we first got the request, it was like, oh, Tokyo, oh, Singapore. But then you sit down to work and say, okay, how do we truly understand this distant culture to grasp the client's real needs? The request was simple. Get this for me. I need this and that.
I mean, simple, very concise. Actually, we need 800 people in the next month to hire across these 2 countries.
And we said, of course. And that's something, and that, of course, for instance, we should be proud of at Posh. That, of course, because we've really shown it many times, like in the case of Tokyo and Singapore, we said, of course. And we succeeded. We can, that's right. We just said, of course we can, and we really did succeed. That feeling when we had the initial input that it was very hard for them to get people who would know it like that, live there and so on and so forth. And when we succeeded after a month, and when they told us, hey, it works, because we were avoiding social media, and in general, that market is specific for social media. They don't follow in this way at this time of day. We had no success, but you succeeded. And then, when you combine that beginning of yours, when you accepted the project and when it's your first step into such a market, and when you get immediate recognition that, yes, you succeeded on the first try.
Yes. Another win is when we accept work without any fear for clients, where we sell incredibly expensive products.
Yeah.
And we're not afraid.
I would just mention one thing there. These are now some, let's say, cute, I don't know, Anja, if you remember, but we're talking about online advertising strategy. That's digital marketing, but we're not just talking, of course, about platforms, social networks. It's a much wider world than that. However, if you're selling some, let's say, products, and let's call them products that can cost more, several €100,000, even millions, and you do that through, let's say, online, you ask yourself, God, will someone buy such a product because they saw my ad, you understand, or is it because I targeted well? It's fascinating, isn't it, when campaigns like that turn out great and the clients actually make sales? And I've really had several times in my life and in business, that kind of surprise, like, is it possible that someone, I remember one occasion, we were selling trucks. And I mean, who buys trucks online? Doesn't really buy a truck just because they saw our ad. Well, they sold them. They sold every single unit they had in stock that month. I don't even know how many. They sold those trucks through our advertisements, right? That one too. Is it possible?
Again, can you? We can.
It is. Yes, it's possible. And that should probably be advice for young people too. Yeah. Never, have doubts in yourself or in your own knowledge. Exactly.
I think that it's actually not about the size of the client, but about the way in which or where the client is from, but simply the way you talk to them, build a relationship, and ultimately work on projects with the client.
Exactly. It's a matter of trust. So it's not just us saying we can. Of course, that's fine. But it's also very important to explain to the client that we can. Because the client also approaches us with a certain amount of apprehension. After all, they're entrusting us with some of their resources, some of their budgets, and they want to get something for that. And then the way we also lead, so we're back to the story of that humanity and cultural differences and adapting to them, where we lead the client through that whole process.
Yes, they must have confidence in us.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Of course. So it's that sense of security. But on the other hand, that's right. Their expectations are such that they simply trust you, right? When someone gives you such large budgets to manage. I think over the years we've matured and definitely learned. We've been through it all. I don't think there's anything in marketing we haven't experienced, from mistakes to challenges and everything else. And we've learned raising ourselves to a professional expert level. So I really think nothing can surprise us anymore. We've really been through a great school of experience. Tanya, you've been managing domestic and international clients for years now, and you're known for the fact that everything always seems so organized and calm with you, even when deadlines are tight. As an account manager, I know all the tasks you have and the size of the team you lead. How do you actually manage to maintain that balance between client needs and the team's work so that everyone stays happy in the process?
I actually think the key is that I was on the client side for a very long time. So from that perspective, I can simply see the whole situation. And that experience really helped me understand how clients think. Today, working in an agency on the other side, let's say, I try to convey that feeling through the way I manage projects and my entire team. What's most important to me is that the client is satisfied, or rather that they feel secure and knows that when they entrust us with a project, we'll see it through to the end, so they don't have to keep calling to ask about our progress. And again, the key is in that trust that we are all building together. The most important thing is to have good organization, a well-organized team, and clear, concrete briefs, a clear direction for your team to follow so that we can finish the job together as it should be done.
And I'd like to add that the energy within the team is truly vital. And yes, and as for the hiring itself at Posh, I have to say that besides expertise and knowledge and experience, that energy is very important to us. And whether someone is cooperative, whether they're there for the team. That's right. That's very important.
That's right. To simply contribute to the team, to equally, actively and collaboratively participate in creating those tasks, processes and assets that we generally make, because the point isn't that we technically just make a brief and now someone realizes it, someone creates it, but simply to weave everyone's individual expertise into one holistic, unique system that will work. So it generally happens that if you also maybe don't have direct connections with my clients, or I don't have direct connections with your clients, that we ask each other something like, did this happen to you? How was it done? And so on. Such things are not separated.
I didn't, at the beginning, ask you, well, actually, it's something that in our world is taken for granted that people know, but could you just say a bit more about your role as client management lead, client relations, project management? Basically, what does a typical business day look like in the life of Una Kolesar?
Compass. I would describe this role simply as a compass. Because in that creative phase, a client comes with an idea and they have an idea, but usually they express that idea through a goal, an ultimate goal. I'd like to be presented like this. I'd like others to see me like this. I'd like XY numbers or whatever. And then my creative position is first to understand what the client really wants. Maybe they want much more than what they say. Maybe they want much more than they are even aware of. Once that true need is understood, then I have to see, okay, how can that need be realized? So what is needed for that need, the client's real need, to be fulfilled? Once we define that, well, then we define who the team is. Then the creativity of that compass within my role is to define which expertise I need and in what percentage and at what pace to make that client's request happen. Well, then once the team is assembled, then direct the team to function in a way that suits the client. Well, once you also build a team like that to function successfully together, it's a lot of people, it's a lot of ideas, it's a lot of...
I'd ask these young people who are watching and listening whether they should even dive into these waters and say they want to become one day, right? For example, a leader.
A creative leader. Yes, because you're often that spark that ignites others' creativity and imagination. You don't have to know everything, meaning a creative leader doesn't have to know everything, but they should know what they don't know and who they can ask. And for me, for example, this position is very exciting because you're the ones who first start communicating with the client, and you're the ones who first create creative concepts and the way of communication and conveying it to the team. Everything else is an upgrade. So yes, I highly recommend it. It is interesting, but it's very creative.
Now, I'd like to ask my dear colleagues, what advice would we give to other smaller agencies that want to grow and that want to follow this, let's say, path that Posh Media has already started and is following?
Good question.
Well, I would tell them they need to be consistent in quality. To be consistent in their quality, because I think that's what will set them apart, which is what I think ultimately sets us apart, because our clients know they will always get something of very high quality from us. And I think they shouldn't have to worry about whether their client is local or somewhere on a global market. They should just treat all clients the same. That's the most important thing.
That quality in general is that thing, and consistency. And I know that often with your clients, Accuracy, precision, and respecting the agreement, so they have that confidence in us that it will be as we agreed, and then we go the extra mile and sometimes more than that. That's that true recognition of the client's needs.
Anja, advice for some small agencies.
Putting in extra effort, which means providing extra value, extra so that they receive even more than they originally thought or expected at the very beginning they would get. Because whenever we gave a little more, we as an agency gained.
That homework has to be done. We've actually gained so many clients through referrals because people were satisfied, companies were satisfied, so they recommended us. And why are they satisfied? Because, of course, I mean, there are so many agencies that are probably bidding for the same job and the same project as we are, but exactly this. Meaning the extra effort we put in, on the other hand, quality control or consistent quality is something that, let's say, sets us apart. And over a longer period of time, it turns a small agency into a serious partner and later, of course, a global player, given that online business is right on our side. So what would you, Una, actually, I haven't asked you, advise?
Definitely educate yourselves, follow the trends. That's what they mentioned about AI and everything. But what's very important is to educate yourself daily about human behavior, meaning human psychology, because I think it's partly what Anja mentioned, that it's often that key extra effort you can put in, those 5 extra minutes that you can dedicate to a client that day, maybe more than what's, let's say, expected, but that can mean a lot to the client. To allow the client to ask you about things that might not necessarily be strictly work-related, for you to ask them if they might need some extra help, and so on and so forth.
Yes, and of course not to hesitate. What I always like is that actually when we're writing, say, a status report, an email, a report, whatever, I always put myself on the other side. I'm not brief, and I like our managers and our employees, especially some of our, let's say, colleagues who deal with analytics, to not look at everything from their own perspective. In the sense of, I've done the analytics and it's perfectly clear to me. I mean, it happens to us regularly.
Yes, they look analytically, yes.
Because they're analysts, it's perfectly clear to them, and then, it's sent to clients that way. No, so please really think carefully about being clear in your communication, be as clear as possible, and think about how the other side will see it, read it, and view it. Give that extra impulse to clarify your message. Explain in simple, easy to understand words without using any big, complicated philosophy or unnecessary jargon. Make sure your point is easy to grasp for everyone. I think that's kind of my advice, let's say, to agencies and people who do this job.
There's also our extra effort, which is something we really take pride in, where we often, and in fact it's basically our standard practice, have meetings with our clients once a month or sometimes every week or even every 15 days, depending on what the client actually needs and prefers. In these meetings, we go over the reports in detail, line by line, and we make sure to explain everything in plain, simple English, teaching them as we go along, because it really matters to us that they can read and understand the reports themselves. That way, the manager can easily pass the information on to the director or to whoever else needs it in the organization. So it's a mutual process, a two-way street. And
that's where that advice comes from, when you present like that, like we meet weekly or monthly, and we're talking about something or we're talking about the same thing we made a document for. But that's that extra effort. You as agency owners, dedicate some time to make that extra effort so it becomes part of your daily routine, and be brave. Don't think on the level of, I gave this many hours and I can receive this many hours and so on. No, just build the relationship in that mutual...
Not everything has to be charged for. Literally, of course, because it will pay off. And that's it. Bravo, Una, how phenomenal this is now, just like in copy.
There,
words
my
in action,
position
go.
in action.
Wonderful. Oh, you can tell you hang out with copywriters a lot. Well, yes. Not everything has to be charged for because it will pay off in the end.
Pay off, that's right. You heard me.
Bravo. There's
the advice to
Una,
sum it up.
There's the advice.
That's
that
it
would
for
be
us.
it.